Welcome to Capturing the Abandoned, a foray into the world of rural and urban abandoned exploration. Hello, my name is Vincent Gerhardt, and along with my co-host, Mr. Lex Nichols, we'd like to welcome you to episode 10 of Capturing the Abandoned with our guest, Gina Simonetti of Rural Revivals on Instagram. As mentioned before, this podcast is for and about the many talented rural and urban abandoned explorers that are out there, primarily on Instagram. It's where we get an opportunity to highlight and recognize these amazing explorers to see what inspires and motivates them. And it gives us all a chance to get to know these individuals on a more personal level as an artist and as an individual. From the statistics that we get back from our podcast hosting company, we are finding out that the podcast is being listened to by a growing international audience. And we want to thank you all for tuning in and supporting this endeavor. We just want to take a moment to mention a few places that have been listening to the podcast. Of course, Canada with Winnipeg, Gimli, Riverton, Lethbridge, Kentville, High Level, and many others representing, just to name a few. Then out to Auckland, New Zealand, Perth, Sunnybank, and Point Cook in Australia, Brighton and London in England, Glasgow, Scotland, and folks from Poland, Brazil, Mexico, and a bunch of other international locations. Once again, thank you all for giving the podcast a listen. And please send us a line at capturingtheabandoned@gmail.com, and maybe we'll read it on an upcoming episode. I have recently discovered another podcast that I just have to mention in this episode. It is called Desert Oracle Radio. The talent for this podcast, Ken Lane, is such a wordsmith with a twisted, dark, and oftentimes very humorous dialogue that he shares about living in the desert of the American Southwest. He speaks about the vegetation, the animals, the tourists, and the strange and unusual. Check out the website at desertoracle.com and be sure to add this podcast to your list. Just a quick note before we move on to the interview. You can follow this show via any of the main podcatchers out there. And if you do, you can receive the latest show automatically. And remember, it's free, and that's the real beauty of podcasts. Some of the upcoming podcasts that we'll be having will be from Kelly from the Forgotten South and Jeremy of In the Bluffs, so please stay tuned. You can find our Facebook page by searching for Capturing the Abandoned, and we'll use this page to share our podcast information, including our show notes and artwork for each episode, and information on locations where you can download, stream, and or subscribe to it. In addition to the Facebook page, we've also created a Facebook group at the same location called Capturing the Abandoned International, which is dedicated to the purpose of showcasing the images, stories, and the people who create the images and art of this genre. This is where we hope to have anyone and everyone from any country post and share their rural and urban abandoned pictures and stories with everyone else. So please stop by and contribute. In this episode, we have the distinct pleasure to interview and feature the young and talented Miss Gina Simonetti, who hails from Lockport, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. Gina thoughtfully shares with us her love and passion for the abandoned. She enjoys her road trips to the country to explore and capture more images for her gallery, takes in a car show when she can, and runs a photography business on the side. Gina is also the moderator for the Abandoned Seekers Hub, and she still has time to work on her growing collection of antique knickknacks, pictures, and books. And now on with the interview with Miss Gina Simonetti. Well, hello, Gina, and welcome to the Capturing the Abandoned podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on, and we're looking forward to you telling us about your adventures in photography and capturing abandoned things. So, Gina, do you want to give us a little background on yourself, a little 411?
Yeah, so I grew up about 20 minutes from downtown Chicago in a little suburb called Hillside. And I lived there until I was about 13 and then kind of moved out to the suburbs, which kind of got me more familiar with the rural areas. And obviously we know where my name kind of developed from on Instagram. It all ties together. I am full-time accounting, have been for about 7 years. I also moderate for a abandoned hub on Instagram called Abandoned Seekers. I've been with them for about 3 years. It's great.
Anything else you want to tell us about yourself?
I do collect antiques on the side. It's kind of been derived from going into these houses and seeing all the things left behind. I never take anything from the houses, but I always thought they were so cool. So I started, going to antique stores and just seeing like, oh, this is what I saw in that house. And it developed into me having a bookshelf entirely dedicated to all these older books. I have a trunk that weighs about 25 pounds filled with old pictures. And it's just, it's awesome. I love everything about it. I actually found a picture a couple weeks ago that had the gentleman's name on the back of it, and he's smirking while having a cigar in his mouth. And I did a little research on him, and I found an obituary written by this lady, and I just had to send her a message because I was like, okay, I've never tried with any of the older pictures before, so I'm going to send her a message and see what happens. And the lady is actually a cousin of his, and he was born in 1842, so obviously she'd never got to meet him. But it was just cool to make that connection, Get a
little history, a little stuff going on. So, Gina, how did you get into this type of photography, the abandoned photography?
I actually first started getting into abandoned houses probably when I was about 11 years old, which is pretty young. But we used to go to a campground that was about 100 miles west of Chicago, and we would always drive up. And, being a child, I was kind of oblivious to it. But once I started getting older, I noticed that every time we would go up and we went around a certain turn, there was this little structure hidden in the trees. And I always wondered about it. And then one day we passed it in the light, and I was like, that's a tiny little house, and it's completely rotted. There's nothing but the skeleton left. And I begged my parents, and I was like, please, can I go run up to it and look at it? And, they were kind of like, okay, you little weirdo, go ahead. So
That's great.
They pulled over on the side of the road, and, it's a country road. It's only got 2 lanes, and there's nobody going down it. So I opened the door and shot across the street, and you had to run through this ditch and climb up a little hill to get to it. And it was just this beautiful 1-room house that was just a skeleton, and it was just in this little patch of trees, and the sun was beaming in on it. And it was just I felt so much love for this place that I had no idea of. And it was just so cool that at 11 years old, I was just this is so neat. There are houses like this, and I didn't understand it. And probably when I was in late 2016, I happened to see my brother watching a video of somebody walking through an abandoned house just out of nowhere. And I thought about that house that I saw when I was little. And I was like, that would be so cool to go visit it again. And not even the next day, I was out on the road going to visit it, and I found so many other houses, and it just kind of spiraled out from there.
It kind of looks maybe like the last picture you posted, a little house tucked back in, so the trees around it.
That's one of my other houses that I just found not too long ago. But that house is has a very special place in my heart. I actually went to go visit earlier this year, kind of late in the winter. And I hadn't visited in a while, but it actually collapsed in on itself. So it was really sad.
Oh,
and, yeah.
Well, at least you got to photograph it before it was completely dilapidated.
Right. I definitely am happy about that.
So in your bio, it says you kind of like to drive aimlessly down the back roads of Illinois. It kind of sounds like us here in Colorado. So you're probably a bit of a road warrior. So it sounds like the same kind of things that we like to do. We'll pick a route and just take off, and we don't know what we're going to find. But is it kind of the same way for you? You just try to run upon something and find something that sparks the passion?
Yes, that's exactly what I do. I will get up at 5:30, 6 in the morning and just say, hey, I kind of remember going through this town a long time ago. Let's go in that direction and hope for the best. And I will just set off, and I don't usually do my research beforehand. So I free-handed just like you guys. And it's just, I've never had any, bad luck, just not running into anything. There's just always something to find if you go out far enough,
We're the same way, or I am anyway. I kind of know a lot of the areas that we're going to go towards, but I'm not a big research guy. I can barely read and spell, but I'm more of a hey, let's take this road and see where it leads us and see what we can find. But I'm kind of the same way. I think Vince is kind of the same way as me.
So happen by something on the road and then say, well, I'll get back to that later and take a picture. So just it's just a lot of it's just discovery.
Right. That's the best. I mean, it's the best feeling when you go down a road, especially when you get to the really desolate parts and you see that one road, and it's the best feeling. I don't know if it is the same for you guys, but because I know you guys don't get too much greenery, but if you ever notice when you're going down a country road and you see a very big grouping and condensed trees, there's usually always something kind of buried in there.
It's like that here too. Yeah, you bet.
So whenever I'm like going down a road and I see a big grouping of trees out of the corner of my eye, I'm like slamming on the brakes and turning down the road to see what's hiding in there. And usually about 8 out of 10 times it's something that's abandoned, whether it's like a barn or a house. It's just, there's something in there.
Yeah, it's worth stopping and investigating. We're the same way. So Gina, what's your favorite subject to shoot?
Houses. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, you could say it about anything, but just houses feel so personal, and there's just such an individual story to each of them, no matter, none of them are the same. I mean, unless you find one of those neighborhoods where they build like the houses up and then they never finish it, like one of those cookie cutter neighborhoods. But other than that, in the country, I mean, every house you find is just its individual own kind of soul. And that's my favorite part about it, is just no matter where you pull up, it's never going to be the same feeling or the same story.
So what kind of equipment do you use when you're out photographing?
I actually just recently, probably earlier this year, switched to a Canon 5D Mark III. And I also have a 24-70 lens. I was shooting for the last pretty much 2.5 years with a Canon Rebel. It was a T3i, I think. And it still got pretty great pictures in my opinion. So of course the Canon 5D Mark III is kind of a beast in itself, but I think the Rebel did justice for what I was doing.
That's quite a big step up. For sure.
Yeah. And everything you've captured looks amazing. So it's not always about the camera. It does help when you have equipment. And you said you're using a 24-70 lens. So I have a Canon 5D, and then I have the 5D Mark II, but I also use the 24-70 f2.8 lens, and then I have a wide angle that I use. But what you're capturing, I can't tell where the Rebel ended and the 5D Mark III came in. We can't see that with your feed, so it's not always about the camera.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good thing. I'm going to say that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. So Lex and I were talking last night after we visited with you a little bit, and we were just going through some of your images and checking out the style that you have. And it's pretty awesome. There doesn't seem to be any HDR, and it's a little muted maybe, and just kind of moody and dreamy. So it's really beautiful.
Thank you so much. I mean, that's exactly what I go for in my pictures. I don't want to be one of those super sappy people. I kind of am, but I don't want to be. But you get those I like everybody that you've talked to on this podcast. There's always such a connection with these homes, and I just want to kind of edit in a way that I felt in that moment when I was standing there, when I drove up to it, or kind of what I imagined the story of the house was. I just feel like when people see these pictures, I want them to feel the same way I did.
Yeah, just to build the mood right into the picture. Yeah, that's awesome.
And it really shows, your work is, we were talking about it and I was like, she's either shooting on film. I said, she's not doing a bunch of HDR. And, we use HDR for a lot of the things we shoot. When I look at your work, it reminds me of Jill Coop. She's kind of the same way. She's more of a iPhone. She's a hoot. But your work is great. Where there's shadows and dark areas, it's dark and it's just got the mood to it. And I think it comes out in your work. It looks phenomenal.
Really, it's captured the way you feel it. That's for sure.
That's so kind. Thank you so much, guys.
Well, you're welcome. It's an impressive gallery that you have, and you have so many different images, and the houses are just amazing.
So what's your favorite utility, software, or photo editing trick? If there's something in particular, or
yeah, no, I bounce between Adobe Lightroom, and I also use the ever so popular Mextures because I do have an iPhone. I love Lightroom because obviously it's a little less complex than Photoshop, and I'm not very computer savvy, so Lightroom's kind of like the easier version, and Mextures is kind of when I want to add a little bit more feeling to it. Like there are pictures where it's pretty on its own and I'm just feeling like posting it, but if there's a day where I feel strongly about whatever's happening that day or the picture or something, I always try to go to Mextures and see if I can kind of incorporate something in that. And usually it's been a pretty great turnout. So
your work's amazing. And honestly, there's some of the people that we've interviewed before that don't even use a computer. So what you're doing is awesome.
So about how long have you been doing this abandoned style of photography?
Just the late 2016-ish, so about almost 3 years. Pretty much 2017 and 2018, every weekend. I mean, I was out. There was Saturday and Sunday, I was gone for 12 plus hours, and I enjoyed every moment of it. Just all the piece of driving by yourself and having the freedom to go all through these places that you would never think of going in the first place, just to find these homes and just kind of find new towns just to like see what's out there. Because I mean, Illinois, nobody is excited to go to Illinois unless they're going to Chicago. So for anybody else, it's just kind of like I don't know. It's cool to get to know the state that you've lived in your whole life, and this was another way to do it.
So out in your travels, we always ask this question: what's the shadiest place you've been to?
Ooh, the shadiest place. I've actually have a couple. Is it okay to say a couple of them?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So this actually happened probably when I first started. I actually wasn't, I was trying to find the big places because there's actually a few kind of factories and warehouses that were closer to where I lived that were abandoned. And then there was a hospital that was actually only a 30-minute drive away that had been abandoned. And I heard about it through my brother's friends. And one day my friend and I went to go check it out. And we probably walked around the property for an hour or so, looking like, creeps trying to find a way in. And it was the funniest thing, too, to add on to it, is while we were walking around, there was an entire family picnic happening in the parking lot of this abandoned hospital. So, not sure what was happening there, but we were, trying to find a way in, and this van pulled up, and a guy got out with a board to board up one of the doors. And me and my friend went up to him and asked, like, hey, this is a weird question, but can we go check out the inside before you put that up? And he's like, yeah, all right. And his, family is in the van behind him, and they're, watching me and my friend go into this dark building, and they're, and, we're going in there. And I mean, this place has just been just ravished, and it's not the greatest. I mean, no, none of the abandoned places are really safe to go through, but I mean, it was completely dark. There was pipes sticking out of the walls that we kept running into. So, but it was super cool because, I mean, hospitals are just terrible to be in while they're open. So when it was abandoned, it was a whole different story. But anyways, we were leaving because the guy gave us a half hour, and we were walking down the stairs, and we were about 4 or 5 floors up, and we were coming down, and the second floor was pitch black, and we had come in on the first floor, and everything on us died. So we couldn't find our way out of the building.
Oh.
And we got down to the first floor, and the staircase that we recognized that we came in at, and the guy had boarded up the door on us.
Oh my gosh.
We were pounding on the board, and we're like, we are screwed if we get locked in here. I mean, everything died on us, which was super weird because everything was charged when we went in. But we were trying to get out of there, and he had boarded up, so we were pounding on it, and all of a sudden he split it back open, and he was just like, oh, hey. And I'm like, were you guys just gonna leave us in there? I mean,
yeah, didn't you just say we could go in?
Right. I mean, maybe he was just trying to teach us a lesson or something. I don't know, but I was just like, okay, that was really weird. We're gonna leave. I'm never going back here again.
Man, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I guess that wasn't considered shady, but it was, weird. It was a weird time.
Oh, that's pretty shady.
Yeah, that'll go for shady.
It wasn't the lunatic asylum, was it?
No, that would have actually been way more terrifying.
Okay, we've had a couple conversations about that. So go ahead. What's your other one?
It was actually both of these places were pretty much hospitals or jails, and this was at a women's correctional facility. And I do these explores majorly on my own. About 10% of them I actually have somebody with, and I decided to go to this women's correctional facility by myself because I'm like, I've handled this before. I can do it again, whatever. And the only way to get to it is you have to park in the parking lot for this forest reserve, and you have to kind of hike through the forest-ish preserve to get to this building, and you have to run across the field because it's kind of exposed. So I'm doing this by myself. I get into the place. There's only a couple buildings that are open and lit. And I walk in, and I never bring a tripod anywhere with me. So I decided this time it would be a great time to do it. And I set it up at the end of this hallway. And I probably was in there for not even 5 minutes. And I put the tripod down, and I set up the camera to take a picture. And I'm looking through the screen, and I see a shadow along the wall in the back of the hallway. And it's in the figure of a person. And I was like, oh boy, maybe it's just, something that's at the end of the hallway, but I was alone, and I was not going to go figure that out by myself. So I waited a couple minutes, and the shadow started moving kind of towards the end of the hallway I was looking at. And I was like, oh no, it's time to go. So I don't think I even closed the tripod. The camera was still attached to it. And I picked up my stuff, tried as quietly but as frantically as possible to hop back out this window that had broken glass around it and jump out, run down this little kind of community pathway between these buildings, and also book it through this field. But I could hear whoever it was behind me shuffling towards me. So I figured could be a bad moment. So what do I do in this moment other than call my mother to let her know what's happening, and in case anything happens to me? She's she's, going to hear the end of it. Well, I'm bolting through this field and I don't hear him anymore because I'm only breathing heavy. And she's like, where are you? What are you doing? I'm on the phone. They're just like, stay calm. I'm just running through this field right now. No big deal. There's somebody behind me.
Oh my gosh.
I get to the corner of the field and I'm in the trees of the forest reserve. And I kind of tell her like, okay, I'm out of the way. I got to go. And I hung up on her. Well, I turn around and there's this gentleman standing at the corner of where I just come out of in all black, just standing there staring at me. And it was the creepiest thing I think I've ever experienced in my life because he just stood there. There was nothing in his hands. He didn't have a uniform on for security or anything. He was just standing there watching me. And I just was not going to chance it and take any more moments, for granted. So I turned around and I just booked it through the trees and found the path again. And of course, and it was mid-August when I did this, I come out onto the trail path in the forest reserve looking like a mess. And there's this family walking through and I've got my camera, my tripod, my hair is all over the place and there's sticks sticking out of it because I just ran through the trees. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, I kind of am, but I just like, I don't want them to ask any questions. But that was another place. Cause I just had no idea. It was just eerie, cause usually if there's somebody in there trying to steal like the copper piping or if they're just, in there being reckless or whatever, they usually yell at you or something.
Yeah.
This guy just followed me out and stared at me while I did this.
So was he wearing a black hoodie?
No, it was just a regular black shirt, black pants, and I didn't even really pay attention to his face because I was afraid to kind of look this person in the eye for some reason. And it was scary because it was such a weird situation. I was just afraid I was going to get caught for something or anything like that. But after that, I was thinking about it and I was like, there was something not right with him.
Being a female, adds a whole nother dynamic to it. And if somebody's in there alone, it's not the best thing, but well, at least you made it out to tell the story.
Right. And it's a good startup conversation for people for sure.
So that was pretty scary. So what's the favorite story you like to tell from all your adventures?
Favorite story. There's actually one, and it's a really funny story because there's this house and it's in my gallery somewhere, and it's got a very long driveway with a no trespassing sign at the bottom, and it's gated and it's got a long driveway that leads up to this really cool house. And I had always passed by it and taken pictures from the street, and I had been by it so many times because it was only about 45 minutes from my house that I was just like, okay, you know what? The grass isn't taken care of. So obviously it's been left for a long time. And I thought with my 2007 Pontiac Grand Prix that I would drive around the gate and up the driveway and discreetly hide my car behind the house and go in there. And I took a friend with me and we were in there. It was such a cool house. They had, 4 or 5 pianos and everything was just kind of left like it was just stuck in time. And we were, checking out the house and there was just so many cool things and we got so caught up. And I happened to look at my clock and I was like, oh my God, we've been here for almost 2 hours. So me and my friend are like, okay, it's time to go. And the sun's setting and we've already been pushing the limits by being here for 2 hours, driving around a gate and just, everything's not adding up for us. So we're going out to the car and I'm about to get in the car and my friend is standing at the passenger door and she's like, oh, Gina, there's a truck pulling up to the gate with his lights on. And I was like, oh no, this is it. We are finished. And I'm like, there's no way out of it. I just have to own up to what I did. And I have no ill intentions of the house, but still I'm trespassing. So I have to go on up to it. So her and I are watching this guy in a white pickup at the gate standing there. And I get in my car, drive down to the gate, get out of the car, and I immediately just start blabbling, like just talking out of my butt because I am so nervous and so scared of what this guy's going to do. And he stands there and he's got his key and he's unlocking the gate and he starts laughing. And I'm like, oh boy, what did we just get ourselves into? And the guy is like laughing and he doesn't say anything. And all of a sudden he looks up at me and he's like, so how did you even get up there? And I was like, well, I drove through the ditch on the side of the gate. And he's sitting there laughing. And I'm just like, I'm like, I understand if you want to call the police. You know, I'm freaking out because I've never been caught before on a farmhouse property, knock on wood. And he was just laughing. He's like, yeah, no. He's like, if you want to take pictures, you could just take them anytime you want. There's really nothing of interest up there. We own the property around it. And this guy just opened the gate to let us out. I mean, he unlocked the gate just to let us off the property. He wanted nothing to, he was just so calm about it.
Calm and accommodating. Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Gina, really cool. Is that the shot where the private property sign is posted on the gate? It's got the long driveway up to the White House.
Yep, it is.
It says, a love that was lost is not to be found or replaced.
Yes.
Yep.
That one.
That's cool. Awesome story.
Yeah, and that'll probably never happen to me ever again, so I'm going to cherish that moment for as long as I can.
It's always nice when it turns out good, that's for sure.
Right. It is. It's a blessing. It's better than a trespassing ticket.
That's right. So if you were to go through your own feed and tell us what would be your best shot and why?
I think that my favorite spot is probably this house, and I call it the murder house because if you look, I can't remember when I posted it, but it's this big old wooden house, and it's got this piece of caution tape actually still around the front post, but it was one of the very few times where I decided to do a little research because I'd been, everywhere back in Illinois. And I was like, okay, I got to switch it up. And I did a research and I found this article about this house that was in Western Illinois, pretty much border of Iowa, that there was somebody actually murdered on the property while it was abandoned. So I know that's I'm like, oh wow, there was a murder in an abandoned house. Let's go check it out. That's my first instinct.
Of course.
But right. But it was a cool place, but just driving up to it, it was in the middle of nowhere. You turn down this road, and as soon as you turn down the road it's on, you lose signal on your GPS, your phone, everything just goes dead. And I was driving, and you pull up to this house, and it is just so overwhelming and it was incredible. The house is just beautiful, and its setting was so beautiful, but combined with its really dark past and everything that's happened at it, it's just like, it's crazy. And the fact that I was there to take a picture of it, and it still had a piece of the caution tape on the front porch. I think that's what made it my favorite shot. It was just like the amount of things that's happened there, and it's just like the house is just so massive and beautiful, and I just felt so lucky to be able to find something like that. But yeah, that's my favorite shot. I call it the murder house. I think I have a couple of pictures of it up there, but it was such a cool house. It was something straight out of a horror movie.
That's amazing.
But this house was just, it was massive. And when you walked around it, just because we went also in the beginning of the year, everything was dead. The trees are dead. The grass is dead. So pulling up to it just gave you a whole different feeling than when you would pull up to it in like the summer or spring. It was just very ominous. And you know what the best part about it was is, you know, knowing the history and everything behind it and just kind of things of that nature in general. We walked into the house and the first thing that's in the hallway, which somebody must have tossed in there, I don't know what they did, but it's one of those big old freezer chests. And it's just sitting there and I'm like, oh no, this is like the worst thing that could be in an abandoned house that you do not want to open.
Right.
Who knows what's in there?
Do you want to talk a little bit about being a moderator and the hubs and stuff that you work with?
Sure. I've actually moderated for a few different groups. I used to do one called Vervex Revolution a while back, and I kind of ran it. It was mostly towards rural things, which was great. And I moderated for Abandoned After Dark. I'm sure you've heard of them for a while. And now I do Abandoned Seekers pretty much. That's the main one because I've just been with them for so long, and it's such a great group of, you know, people. And it's great to be able to go through the feed. I know a couple of people that you guys have talked to are moderators, and it's such a cool thing to just be able to find people's shots and kind of put them out there for recognition. Like, these people are, you know, like, they're putting their work out there, and, you know, you can see it through their hashtags or something like that. But when you find a big hub and they're able to put it out there, it's kind of like this little boost, like, hey, you deserve some recognition. This is great. Like, beautiful work. It's awesome. It's really awesome to be able to do that because people are very appreciative, and I love that.
I know we're appreciative every time any one of our images are featured, and you know, it gets a little bit more exposure and a little recognition for what we're doing. So we really appreciate it. I know that.
Oh yeah, keep putting out the great work, guys. I mean, it's fun. It's just really fun.
We appreciate it, and I know you have to go and scroll through hundreds and hundreds of images, but it really gives somebody some exposure that they wouldn't normally get. So and I think that's what drives this. That's what keeps that momentum going. Is you get somebody that'll feature you on their hub, and then you get, you know, we've had some where we've posted something and we'll get, you know, 1,000 likes or, you know, whatever, and we're just like, oh, that's just so cool. We love it, you know, and we're small time compared to some of these other photographers, but in retrospect, it's just awesome that there's people out there willing to put the time in to look at the images and repost something. So we appreciate it.
It's a great time. It's a good time, and I feel like it's a big important thing in finding others in the community and just connecting people, like you said, and it's great. I mean, I found so many people through features. I'm like, wow, that is amazing. Like, who are these people? Where are they? I want to see more. And I follow through there. So, yeah, it's great.
Do you do any shows? Do you show off any of your work at galleries or art shows or anything like that?
I did one show last year. And it was at an Oktoberfest. It was kind of like it was like one of those fests where they sell Avon jewelry, kind of stuff like that. So my booth was very out of place there, but it was actually the most fun time because you get the weirdest looks, but you also get the most interesting people that come into your booth to talk to you about what it is. I mean, these people just come in and they tell, like, that's so cool. Like, I've seen places like that before too, and I never thought to take a picture of it. And then they're just like, you know, and in my booth, I had also like old antique furniture for people to sit in and kind of like look through the pictures. And it was kind of a cool way for people to come in and bond with me and talk with me. And it's a lot of work.
It's networking.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work, that's for sure. But you do get to meet some interesting people. That's what I like, where we get a chance to do it.
Yeah. No, it's great. And the people that come in and just like to talk to you. I never forget this one lady came in at like the end of the night, and I was just fried because it was the second night and it was about 95 degrees. And I was just like, I probably looked so scary sitting at my table. And she came up to me and she started talking to me, and she's like, you know, I've got my grandfather's old farm, and it was out in like, I think it was a town probably about 2 hours from me. And she's just like, yeah, his farm, you know, nobody in our family could come to terms with what to do with it or anything like that. It's just been sitting there for years. And she's like, I'd love to see how it looks now. She's like, it makes me so sad, but she's like, it would be so cool to see somebody else, you know, capture kind of like last moments. And it kind of hit me. And like, that's, you know, that's something personal. That's such a crazy connection to make with somebody that, you know, like they've gone through all of this. And it kind of gives you kind of a background of stories of some of these houses, is like these families just couldn't figure out what to do with the house, and they just kind of left it there, and it makes it super sad. But
yeah,
you know,
Right.
there's a lot of different stories that go along with them. That's for sure. They're all different.
So, Gina, do you have some people that you want to give a shout out to, other Instagram photographers or people that maybe influenced you?
Oh yeah, I have a few of them if you don't mind. First of all, my family and my friends. I mean, they've been so supportive of me. A lot of them have tagged along with me on my adventures, and they put up with so much, being in the road with me for, you know, 14 to 16 hours at a time. But a couple of people on Instagram, Jessica Lee Duran. I don't know if you guys have heard of her. She's in the Virginias. She's awesome. She has the most beautiful, moody edits ever of these houses, and I never get tired of them. There's Fistful of Powder, Justin. He's in Canada. He's film, and it's amazing. I never get sick of his. Then there's Jill, of course. Love her stuff so much. She has some of the coolest things I've ever seen. And I told her, I messaged her, I think this weekend, I was just like, can you just put a book together of all of your car shots? Because they are so cool.
Yeah, those car shots are amazing. They're knock your socks off.
Yeah, it's the way she gets them. And I don't know, there's just something about them that's just like so sleek and so enticing that I'm just like, I could look through everything all day long. Never get sick of it. But then there's a couple other people. There's Ohio Relics. Her name is Icy, and she's in Ohio. She has some of the coolest finds that are rural Ohio, and I'm in love with everything. She has a very kind of close to editing style as me, but her shots look like film, and they are so cool. Then there's obviously Vincent from Lost Americana. He's so cool.
Yeah, we like Vincent.
He is super cool. I think me and him have like gone back and forth, and we've actually like run into the same places, and he's been doing it for so much longer, so I'm sure he's seen these all before me. But it's just cool whenever he's like, hey, I've seen that before, and I'm just like, huh, no way.
I'm surprised you guys haven't been out together.
I know, it would be really cool. And I would love to meet up with all the Illinois people here. I mean, you've interviewed, I think, Amy and
interviewed Vincent and Amy. I think that's the only two, I think, from Illinois.
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember. I thought there was somebody else, but I think I'm losing it. But it would be so cool to do a meetup, because I think we've all found this house that's in Western Illinois that we all kind of, whenever somebody posts a little snippet of it, we're like, hey, know where that is? And I'm like, we should all just meet there one day. But I also want to give a little shout out to my friend Nick. His username is at non.extent. We actually met on Instagram a couple of years ago, and he was posting abandoned stuff, and he's in Philadelphia based, but he had more city stuff and kind of stuff like, you know, just like churches and just more things in the city. And, you know, I never really see that. The most city things I see are like Gary and things based like that. So we started talking, and he actually has become one of my best friends. And it's crazy to think that Instagram and this like abandoned genre brought us together. And it's just like, he is one of my best friends and we've met up a couple times, and I'm just like really thankful for him because he's like one of my number one supporters and he's awesome. So
great.
Yeah. So it's the journey, and I love everybody on Instagram. Everybody has so many beautiful talents on there, and I'm just so thankful to be a part of this community.
Well, we're actually, Vincent, where I say we.
It's we.
We're putting together a Bando Fest. I think it's next year in November. Is that correct?
Yeah, it still hasn't been totally locked down to say we're going to do it, but it's sure looking like it might happen.
Yeah, we're trying to get, as many people, Jackson, Vincent Johnson, Cindy, Francesca, everybody that we can. We're trying to get some kind of meeting put together. And, we've had a lot of people that have interest in it. And I've seen a couple of these where Instagram photographers meet at this place and then they go and photograph and stuff. So hopefully something will come of it. We're just in the infant stages right now, but we have a vision anyway.
Yeah, there's a vision for sure.
Well, as soon as you guys announce it, I'm going to gas up my car and leave.
Oh, well, good.
Okay. Well, we got a lot of cheap hotels here. We're the $59 a night places here.
And they're worth every penny.
Yeah, it's not a Hilton, but you'll have a bed and a shower. That's for sure.
And that's all I could ever ask for.
Is there anything else that we might have missed that you'd like to touch on before we're done here?
No, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I talked through a lot of stuff. I feel like I talk a lot.
Well, good. That's what it's all about.
Good. It's information.
This is how we get to know you.
I love it. I love it so much. This is so much fun.
So, Gina, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you? Do you just like them to DM, direct message, or do you have an email or a website? Or
best way to contact me is probably through my DMs. If you just want to send one, I try very hard to look at my messages every day. And the other way to contact me is I have my side venture, which is my portrait business. I have a website. It's GinaMariePhotography.co. If you ever wanted to check out, I'm actually starting a section right now based on my abandoned stuff because as much as I love portraits, I can't get away from the abandoned stuff. Yeah, so those are the best ways to get in touch with me.
Cool. Well, Gina, it's been a real pleasure to have you on here with us, and we're delighted to spend a little time with you and get to know you, and look forward to getting this podcast out to the public.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me. I love this. I love that you guys are doing this podcast. It's great to get to know the people and listen to their voices and kind of go more into depth of what they're doing. So keep up the work.
Thanks for sharing all your beautiful work, and we'll definitely be in touch down the road. Look forward to hooking up with you again.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Miss Gina, thank you so very much for being our guest and sharing your story with us on this episode of Capturing the Abandoned. Folks, if you're not already following Gina, please be sure to visit her amazing gallery on Instagram. You can follow her at Rural Revivals and be sure to check out the incredibly well-curated hub she helps moderate at Abandoned Seekers. That's at abandon_seekers_. Thank you, Gina. The music bed for this show is titled Capture and was composed by my good friend and co-host, Mr. Lex Nichols. And for your listening pleasure, we have included the full track at the end of this episode. You can find more of Lex's music on his website at lexnichols.com, on his YouTube channel, Spotify, and on iTunes. Please be sure to give him a listen. We've reached the end of this episode of Capturing the Abandoned, and we hope that you have enjoyed it. You should be able to find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are served. including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Overcast, and more. Please subscribe and be sure to let any of your adventurous friends and relatives know about this podcast. Your feedback is important to us, so please feel free to reach out to us at capturingtheabandoned@gmail.com and leave us your thoughts, ideas, and suggestions on how we can improve this show and bring you the best Capturing the Abandoned experience. Fun times, exciting guests, and abandoned content are up ahead, so please stay tuned. And until next time, be safe out there. As promised, here is the full version of Capture by Lex Nichols.